Welcome to the You Can Man podcast, episode 93. I'm Josh.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dave.
And on this week's episode, what actually happens to your body when you die?
All right, guys, welcome back to the You Can Man podcast, where we believe what one man can do, you can do as well. But you got to have help from your friends and the proper know-how. Guys, you want to know how to deal with a body when you die? Well, we've got a mortician.
Tonight's the night, boys.
Tonight is the night. If you've ever wondered what happens to your body and what in the world a mortician does, we've got guest Greg Free with over 20 years experience on the show with us. Greg, go ahead and say hello.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, and we're gonna get in. We've got a ton of questions, so
there's a lot.
We are gonna do our normal shoot the breeze little tiny segment here, but we wanted to leave enough room to ask all these questions.
Yeah, we're gonna go rapid fire on Greg.
For sure. I'll go first because it actually kind of has to do with death and it's kind of morbid. I just saw it was just a funny tweet that I saw.
Sounds hilarious.
I don't know if I told you guys this, but there's this tweet and it says, "Me and my friends would have killed E.T. with hammers. I can tell you that much." And I was like, that's totally
true. I would not have been curious. I'd have punted him.
Yeah, that thing wouldn't come out of the woods. It wouldn't make its way out.
Yeah, I would kick that thing straight through those uprights.
I mean, you're a 10-year-old boy in the woods and E.T. pops out
with
of the
that
woods.
glowing finger and that little weird face.
I mean, you and your friends are going to kill that thing with hammers.
For real.
That's really funny.
Anyways, that's what I had. What about you guys?
I don't know. I think that kind of takes us right into the topic. I can't top that. Okay. I just got back from a 3 and 4 year old's t-ball practice.
Okay,
that ended at 8 p.m. So
what's up with that?
I
don't know what's up. I did the same thing. We had the slot right before Josh, and it occurred to me before, but I don't know why we have 5-year-olds playing baseball. It's if people who say it's a simple game are idiots. It's not. It is the most complicated game. Try and explain baseball to somebody who's never played baseball. And you're like, there's a batter and there's runner, there's a hit, you hit the ball and they have to catch it. There's a pitcher and there's a bat. You can walk them. Also home runs. And then, there's RBI. It's just, there's so many things. I'm trying to explain this to a 5-year-old. Total blank stare. So
right.
Anyway, I'm going to make him quit.
Yeah. Greg, you got anything random to add to our Shoot the Breeze segment here?
Yeah, I don't think I can compete with the E.T. story. That week was actually pretty normal, and normal considering all things. So, yeah, it was a normal week.
Right. Well, good deal. Well, our first question usually for guests is, where are you on the DIY scale? So we wanted to make sure we ask you that. So it's a scale 1 to 10. Where do you feel like you land on that DIY scale?
I'd probably say like a 7. I've done some metalworking and things like that. Obviously, a little bit of construction stuff here and there, but really kind of rebuilt a project car a couple of years ago. So everything from the engine all the way down to the transmissions is something I've always wanted to do and never done it. Didn't have any help. I watched YouTube a lot, and it was great. It turned out perfect.
YouTube is your friend. And, now that we have these guests on and I'm kind of recalibrating my scale, I'm pretty sure I'm a 2 on the DIY scale. I've never restored a car. I have an old Bronco. I look at it every day, and I'm like, I want to restore you, but I don't do it.
Greg, I'm going to go ahead and just bump you up because you're definitely not a 7 if you've gone through an engine and transmission. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Greg, let's just hop right into it. What in the world made you decide to become a mortician?
It's one of those jobs I don't think you wake up one day and just say, I'm gonna go be a funeral director or go be a mortician. Since a young age, probably 5th grade, maybe as far back as I can remember, I didn't really understand what they did, but I knew that I wanted to do that. And I can't explain the draw to it. Most funeral directors will tell you that same story. Like, there was just a draw to funeral service and to helping people, even at the time when you really don't understand what the job entails. And so I spent a good portion of my life knowing that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah, so completely abnormal, and that, being drawn to it, I guess, is I mean, you just are. There's some jobs that some people gravitate towards. Can you, since this is, we've got a ton of the off-the-wall questions I'm sure you get, but we'd really like to go, since this is a You Can Man Spirit DIY show.
You can man become a mortician?
If you could give us a brief synopsis on how you become a mortician. Like what are the steps? How do you start? Things like that. Just a real short.
And real quick before he answers that, I just kind of wanted to let our listeners know, you may have noticed that we've done this several times before. So we had someone that started a Chick-fil-A, there's an owner operator over Chick-fil-A, someone that started a lawn care business.
You can do anything if you just believe in yourself.
Right. And a lot of work. But this kind of goes along with, everything that we talk about. And so we're kind of doing like almost a little series here, I guess, on different career stuff. So anyways, hearing from a mortician is going to be really interesting. So Greg, take it away. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So for me, I started at 17. So that's kind of where the journey started. But, and just for instance, in the state of Georgia, if you want to be a mortician, want to be a funeral director, you have to go to an accredited college where they offer a degree program, mortuary science. You have to do an internship that's about a little over 1,800 hours. So total process, you're going to close to 4 years before you can take the state law exam. And then once you pass the state law exam, then you are licensed as a funeral director and embalmer here in the state of Georgia. So that's kind of the path to get to the ultimate end goal of being a mortician.
Okay, so kind of a standard like 4 or 5 year-ish from high school, let's say, to being a mortician?
Yeah, so it's that's pretty standard, especially in our state and a lot of other states in the nation as well. So it's kind of the benchmark. Most of the programs are very similar.
I don't know why I thought you could just walk in off the street and start draining bodies, day one. No, I mean, there's a totally full-on degree program.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to go into it.
Makes sense.
Well, here's a icebreaker question. Are people scared of you when they find out that you're a mortician? Like, are people weirded out when you tell them that you're a mortician?
Probably not most of the time. I mean, if you bumped into me on the street, you would never have a clue that I was a funeral director. I do not look like the typical funeral director by any means, just probably a normal guy, I would guess. But yeah, sometimes when people find out what you do, a lot of people ask, well, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm in business. And they say, what kind of business? I say, the people business. And they say, oh, what kind of people? And I say, well, and you explain it to them, then you get the, and then there's usually a flood of questions after that. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're like the guy that deals with some of the most like uncomfortable times of people's lives, like, so
it's called death.
Right. So I'm saying, well, even if it's your relatives or whatever. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people just, get mentally weird about that anyway. So if, you're the guy.
Well, I'm curious, Greg, you've said funeral director a couple times. Are morticians and funeral directors, is that one and the same? Or is it interchangeable or, what's the deal there?
Yes. So it's kind of interchangeable. Funeral director is what most people would call. Sometimes a mortician, it's more so geared towards just the embalming side. In the state of Georgia, you have to be licensed as both. You can't carry one license or the other. You have to be licensed as a funeral director and embalmer. But if you wrap those two together, yes, you could. You could call them a mortician. That's kind of the old school name, if you will, but they've kind of sweetened that up a little bit and call people funeral directors now because it doesn't seem as
we call that churching it up, right?
Correct. It's exactly what happened in our profession as well. But a lot of people still call us morticians.
Very cool. So let's get into the basics of like what exactly you do. So we're talking, I guess this is kind of like a chain of custody. I don't know if that's a term you guys would use, but what happens to a body? So if you could kind of walk us through of like someone dies at a hospital versus at home, or if you could kind of walk us through like where you come in. Are you on call all the time? Like how does your day go when there's a body to be had?
Yeah. So, our profession is one of those that is on call 365 days a year, 24-hour day. Death doesn't stop on Christmas. It doesn't stop on kids' birthdays. It doesn't stop on a night out with your wife. And so, yes, we have staff on call 24 hours a day. And, when it's your turn up, then it's your turn up. And, we obviously, when we're called, we go. And that could be at 2:00 in the morning. It could be at 2:00 in the afternoon. And, we're got to get out of bed, get dressed, put a suit on, do that whole thing to be respectful to the families. And so once that call is initiated, whether you're at a hospital or you're at home or, assisted living facility, whatever, we go and, obviously make contact with the family if they're there or the staff. And, we bring that person that's passed into our care and transport them back to the funeral home. And that's kind of where the process starts. if there's going to be any preparation or, whatever needs to be done according to the family's wishes. And then obviously we meet with the family the next day or the same day if it's during the day and kind of discuss with them what they'd like us to help them with.
Are you the one who physically gets the body, like actually picks the body up? And how does that go?
Yeah, so most funeral directors are. In my current role, I don't have to do that as much. Thank goodness. I've paid my dues for years and years and years and years.
So you got some heavy lifters under you.
Yes. When you call, you're going to get a staff member of our firm or any firm for that matter. And usually everybody's on a rotating call schedule. And like I said, I've been out on Christmas morning. I've been out on birthdays. I've had to get up and leave dinners. I've had to leave my own family. Much like anybody in our profession, there's a lot of sacrifice because, again, death does not take a day off.
And do you guys usually go out in a team or does anyone go out alone? Depends on the body.
Yeah, you'll take one person. And if it's at a home or if there's an unusual situation, like maybe someone is a little bit heavier or there's just a different, maybe there's some stairs involved or something like that would require two people, then we'll take two folks. But all of our equipment, our cots, everything that we use to transport someone and place them in the vehicle, all of that can be worked with one man.
Oh, yeah,
as long as the person is, yeah. It
just occurred to me, do people give you a heads up, my brother passed away and hey, he's a big old boy, so bring a couple people. We
ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
And so you mentioned the suit.
Yeah, we ask a lot of questions up front because we want to know what we're walking into. We want to know the circumstance that we're involved. We ask if there's stairs, if the family's present, has the doctor been notified, all of these questions. If the police officer or somebody's calling us, we already ask questions about the scene and things like that so we know what we're getting into.
You mentioned a suit. So are you doing this in a suit, like retrieving the body in a suit?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
so you get a call.
You'll always see them go out to suit.
So you get a call in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. You have to get up,
literally suit
dressed, suit up.
Look, Josh, Greg is a professional.
This is what people need to know, though. You have no idea. This is all.
Yeah, if you've never been through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we try to explain to families sometimes when they call us and they say, well, how long will it take you to get here? We normally say within the hour. Well, the reason being is because we have to get up and get dressed and put a suit on, get to the funeral home, and then get to wherever the person is. And so, we use the old joke with a lot of people, we don't sleep in our suits. We have to get up and put them on.
Well, you say
when we do that, it takes time.
You say within the hour. I mean, that's faster than Amazon. That seems really quick. So I'd be like, well, okay, can't do much better than that.
Yeah. Where's the...
Yeah, you got to move pretty fast.
Yeah. Where's the weirdest place that someone has died that you've had to get a body?
Like Elvis on the toilet or something?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's not weird. When it comes, when you come right down to it, that's really happens quite a bit. I don't know. I would say, usually involving some type of unfortunate situation, maybe an accident or something like that.
Right.
I would say at an airport was probably the weirdest one, and it had nothing to do with a plane crash, so that was a little different.
Interesting.
This scenario was very different. It was a construction accident, and so it was a little different.
Okay.
Man, Greg can't be squeamish. You can't be squeamish to do this job, I'm realizing.
No, I can't imagine.
No, not at all.
Talking about squeamish, we want to get into some of the details, not in gross details, but the embalming process, because I just don't know hardly anything about it.
I have no idea how this works.
Yeah, can I kick this off with a how soon do you start action on a body? When it's back at the funeral home, is it sitting around for a little bit, or how soon do you start working on it?
We try to do that as soon as we can. So as soon as we get permission from the family, we either have to have verbal permission or written. We have them sign a form saying it's okay for us to proceed with that. And so once that has been determined, we try to do that right away as quick as we can. The sooner we can get started, the better result we're going to get.
I've got a question kind of related to this, but way before the embalming process, but it just made me think. Is there any stories of the old timers that you work with? Because, nowadays we know when somebody's dead pretty much, but not if, I don't know, maybe 60 years ago, there could have been situations where
there's movement.
Who knows, right? Was there ever any situation from an old timer that you talked to where they brought a body back to the morgue and the person ended up not being dead? Have you heard any of those stories?
Not that I've been personally involved in. That's usually an old wives' tale. By the time you make it to us, it's pretty sure that, of course, it has happened. It's been on the news, things do happen, but that's really also a little bit of funeral service history. That's where the wait or the visitation started. Really, they were sitting up watching you to make sure you were dead. That's the whole purpose of it. They wanted to make sure they were dead before they put you in the ground the next day.
Okay, so back to embalming. So what's this process like? Are you draining blood out, and what's the liquid that's put in? Can you give us a little bit of how that goes?
Oh, and where does the blood go?
Right back to your sewer system.
Sewers.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Just like I do with my motor oil. Wait a minute. I'm just kidding.
Correct.
Dang. Well,
it goes right back to the water system.
You just pour it down the drain.
Good.
Well, hey, it's mostly water anyways, right? Is it not?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Everything is treated. The only time it's different where it may go to a holding tank or something is if you live in a city, kind of like New Orleans, where you're below the water table. Most of those firms have holding tanks for stuff like that. But
I'm going to be stuck on that one for a minute, I feel like.
Yeah, the nice way of putting embalming is it's basically a vascular wash. That's the nice way of putting it. And so what we do is we basically replace blood with embalming fluid.
And that's like simultaneous?
Preservation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use an embalming machine that basically acts like your heart. So it pumps fluid in, and with that pressure, it pushes blood out. And so it's like making a giant loop. It washes the system out.
It's like a transmission flush, right? But
a permanent one. It's permanent. There's no going back. You don't change this fluid.
Same principle.
Wow. Okay. So I heard this. Is it true? So what do you do with the organs? I've heard they go in a bag. Is that true?
Normally, we don't have anything to do with that unless someone has been under the care of a medical examiner or something like that, where they might have removed those for testing or for further observation, and then they'll send them back to us in a biohazard bag. And we have to do, so everything that comes with that person goes with them when they are buried. So nothing, we don't keep anything. It all gets treated. It all goes directly with them.
Okay. So in certain circumstances, organs could come to you separate from the body, but you bury it all together.
That is correct.
What if you're an organ donor? Does somebody roll and be like, I'm going to take these, and then they leave? I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, most of the time, if you're an organ donor, they'll go to the hospital and perform that.
Yeah.
So it's in a operating room type setting, and all of that is done before the person ever comes into our care.
Okay. Well, next we had some kind of questions dealing with the coroner and when he or she may come into play. So do they come to the funeral home and do their thing, or do they take the body from you? Or does it go to the coroner first and then to you? How does that work?
Yeah. So the law in the state of Georgia says any death that's not attended by a physician, or, they're under hospice care, the coroner has to be notified. And so then the coroner can come out on scene and they'll determine if it needs further investigation or if it don't. If it doesn't, then they'll pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, this person's released into your care. You can come pick them up. And so then we'll go from there. So most of the time they don't ever have to come to our facility. We're always going to wherever the death occurred. So, if it's at home or whatever, we'll go there and then they'll release them to us and then we'll get our process started.
And so a coroner would arrive on a crime scene. Is that the person that would declare someone deceased at a crime scene?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless the county has a medical examiner. And so there's only 4 in the state of Georgia.
So can you say the difference? Can you tell us the difference between?
Medical examiner is a pathologist, so they're a physician, and so they're hired by the county. They can perform autopsies and things like that. A coroner is actually an elected position. They're elected by the voters. They do much of the same thing, except they don't perform autopsies and they are not an MD. They have to rely on the GBI here in our state to conduct autopsies for them for cases where they think further investigation needs to be done. So that's really your biggest difference. They both have the authority to declare cause, manner, and time of death, but one is an MD and can perform a lot of those services themselves. The other is an elected official.
Gotcha.
Okay, and you kind of hinted at crime scene stuff earlier. How does that play out? Is that takes a lot longer before you can get in there to get the body? Does the body have to stay in the crime scene for and just until the police are happy with all the evidence they've collected? How in the world does that work?
Yeah, most of the time it'll be a little bit before we're involved in those situations, just because, yes, they're going to take all their pictures, collect all their evidence, make notes, do all of their investigating before anything gets moved. And so a lot of times I equate it a lot to the military. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. So you hurry to get there, and then you're going to wait a little bit until they determine what needs to be done.
Gotcha. Okay. So, man, so much. If we can get into we have some casket specific questions. One is on everyone's mind, or at least mine, with COVID happening. I'm guessing you've seen increases of, frequency of death, I guess. But what about casket supply right now? Has it changed?
It definitely has slowed down for particular caskets. Some of the more popular ones, we use the largest casket company in the United States, and everything is made here in the United States. And so obviously they serve many, many, many funeral homes, not just ours. And so, yeah, you see a little bit of a delay with some units that may be more popular than others. But, really that's one good thing about our profession as a whole is they're usually very, very good about being prepared. They have the ability to increase their production very, very rapidly if they need to. So a little bit of a hiccups, but I think overall they've done very well throughout the pandemic. So.
What's the craziest, most expensive casket you've ever worked with?
It'd probably be a Promethean or a Masterpiece Mahogany. Promethean, everybody would recognize that's the same casket they put Michael Jackson in. It's a 48-ounce solid bronze casket.
How much does that weigh?
So then the Masterpiece, how much does it what? I'm sorry.
How much does that weigh?
Unoccupied, I think it's probably a little bit shy of about 350.
Okay, that's not terrible.
That's heavy, but that's doable. Yeah, I'm curious, Greg, are there male and female specific caskets? And I asked this question, I'll wait for your answer, but I ask it for a specific reason, very specific.
Yeah, there is. Some of them are obviously more feminine in design, as far as colors and things like that. And some of them are obviously more masculine. So, yeah, that's really what differentiates it.
Yeah, I just asked because when my grandfather passed away, this is years ago, I believe he was buried in a light blue casket. And my dad, way back in the day when he was young, all I know is he drove a hearse. I don't know what he did beyond that. But we're standing there and he leans over to me. He's like, "That's a lady's casket." And I was like, I don't know if up until this point, I didn't know if he was joking or not, like messing with me. But anyway, I guess it was a lady's casket. Sky blue.
Maybe. Yeah, there's some light blue ones that are male. There's some light blue ones that are female too. But yeah, I could definitely see how the line would get.
This one was hourglass shaped, so I'm just guessing that was a lady's casket. Anyway,
probably yeah, for female.
Do people request American-made caskets specifically?
Do people what? I'm sorry.
Do they You mentioned the caskets like that you get your supply from as being American-made. Are there a bunch of non-American made, and do people come in and request American made caskets specifically?
Most people don't really know unless your funeral director tells you. But yeah, there's a lot of caskets that get made in China, and a lot of them look exactly like the ones that get made here. The difference is they're about a third of the cost, and with that comes about a third of the quality. So there's quite a few people that use those for a cost reason, which there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Yeah, most of the time you would never know if that casket was made here or not unless you noticed the little emblem at the foot, not the Made in America emblem, but there's a trademark of the company here in the United States that makes a lot of these caskets. But as far as design and color schemes and things like that, these overseas companies got very good at knocking off American caskets.
Interesting. So along the lines of caskets, let's talk about the casket going in the ground. Is there, what do you got to do to put a casket in the ground? Like you dig in the hole and then you put in like 3/4 stone down first, or like does it just go straight in on soil contact, or how in the world does that work? I think that there's like a box around the casket. Is that right?
I think it's concrete. Well, Greg can tell us. I thought it was lined with concrete.
That's right.
Yeah, they make vaults out of steel and concrete. Predominantly we use concrete, but yeah, I mean that's it's not a law that you use a vault. It is a cemetery requirement at most cemeteries, and it's not so much for the protection of the casket, even though it does offer that. It's more so the protection of the cemetery. Graves are only 4.5 feet deep. So you got about 18 inches of soil between top of the ground and top of the vault.
Mm-hmm.
If you use equipment to open graves and that casket was not protected by a vault, when you drive your equipment in the cemetery, it would damage that casket underneath the ground. So that's why most cemeteries require the use of a vault.
And is that, when you speak to like the quality or lack thereof, is that one of the why would we want a high quality casket, I guess is what I'm getting at.
So really, I mean, at the end of the day, it really, and this is what I would tell any family I sit with, it's your personal choice. If it's a cloth covered wood and you're happy with it, great. If it's a solid bronze and you're happy with it, great. It really boils down to personal choice. Sure, some of them offer, like stainless steel obviously is non-rusted, so it's not going to rust if it comes in contact with the elements. Whereas carbon steel, this 20, 18, or 16 gauge wood, copper and bronze, same thing, doesn't rust. It may tarnish, but it's structurally is a lot stronger and it's going to last if it comes in contact with the elements. That's really the only difference. It boils down to personal choice. It's what you're most comfortable with.
Have you had anybody? So, like, I have frequented Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta. It's like for our listeners who are out of state, it's kind of one of the most historic kind of Atlanta landmark cemeteries, Oakland Cemetery, and it's got all these beautiful mausoleums. I don't think that's really a thing anymore. But have you had any customers or clients? I don't know what you call them that have done these, elaborate mausoleums? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, it is. Believe it or not, it may not look to what it looked like at Oakland. Now it's everything's made out of granite. Back then, a lot of it was made out of marble and stuff like that. Marble is very brittle over time, so they really want to use granite. But yeah, we still have families that come in all the time and say, we like the idea of being in your cemetery, but we want something a little bit different. And we want basically a cemetery inside of the cemetery. We want our own little area. So we have private estate gardens where people can have that type of stuff, anywhere from as simple as you could think to elaborate buildings that hold 6 to 8 to 10 family members or more. So if I tell our folks, if it's not illegal or immoral, we can make it happen.
Okay. Let's say that I've got some land, say I've got like 10 acres or something out in the country. What does it take for me to set aside an acre of that and say, this is now going to be my family's cemetery? Can I make that happen? And is it cost prohibitive? Like, what are the steps involved?
It really just depends on the county. So there are some restrictions in different counties that require you to have a certain amount of land, that require a certain amount of offset between you and your property owners. You certainly could, but like you said, sometimes by the time you get done going through all the paperwork and doing everything you need to do, it's going to be very cost prohibitive, because basically once you zone that as a cemetery, it can never be changed. Nothing can touch it. You're never going to sell any of that property around it. You got to be sure that's where it's going to be. It does happen though, especially for people that have more than 5 acres or so. You definitely have the possibility of doing that if you want to.
Okay.
All right. So alternative to casket would be cremation.
Correct.
Do you deal in cremation? I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, I'm a certified crematory operator. So
okay. Yeah. And what's that process like? And again, you don't have to be too morbid, but we're curious.
Yeah.
Like, how long does it take? And is it like an oven or what? Like, what's the setup? Is it gas? Things like that.
Yeah. So most crematories run off natural gas. And so it's actually a very clean process. It's very environmentally friendly. It's what a lot of people, that's a big misconception about cremation. It's actually probably the cleanest form of disposition there is, because everything is completely destroyed. So there's nothing left but bone fragment. That bone fragment is then collected and processed into a fine powder, and that's what's actually given back to the family. So what people term ashes is not really ashes. It's basically pulverized bone fragment.
Yeah, yes. Bones, man. All right. What about, so let's say someone weighed 400 pounds, 500 pounds. Can they be cremated? Are there issues with that?
Absolutely. Not issues. There's machines that are rated up to 1,000 pounds. And so it may take a little bit longer. You have to be very mindful of when you're doing cremations like that, because you don't want to damage the machine or cause any type of fire issues or anything like that, which you definitely can. So yeah, the process is still the same, whether you're 100 pounds or 900 pounds. It's just timing and things like that. Obviously, those take a little bit long.
Let's say somebody had a stainless steel knee or like a pacemaker or something. Can they be cremated?
Pacemakers have to be taken out prior to cremation because they will explode and they'll damage the crematory unit. So a lot of times we actually have a metal detector. We'll wand them and make sure if we find one, you can usually see a scar where they've been implanted.
Okay.
And we'll just go in and take it out. Yeah, we'll take it out.
So if you have a loved one cremated, how sure can you be that it's their ashes? Like when I had a dog cremated, they were like, these are community ashes. Okay, this is like 10%.
They just told you straight up.
Yeah, they told you straight up. I was like, thank you for being honest. So I'm just curious, can you be certain that these are your loved one's ashes?
I can't speak for how other people do it, but I can tell you how we do it. There is 1,000% certainty that is your loved one, because the minute that they come into our care, there's an ID band that's placed with them. That thing is checked about 1,000 times between that and the time we actually cremate. We cremate one person at a time. That's it. The chamber is completely clean before we move on to the next cremation. There's a little metal ID disc that gets placed in there with the person that has a serial number on it. That disc is charged, so you know it's been a part of the cremation process, and it's usually taped inside of the cremation container so people can see that it was actually there. But yeah, I mean, again, with pets, a little bit different, right? They usually do exactly what you said. They call community cremations, unless you go to a pet funeral home, and those do exist, and they will do individial cremations.
Missed out there.
I've had both of my bulldogs cremated.
Oh, I didn't miss out. It was an upcharge. So I said no, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, it's a personal choice, right? Some people are like, no, I'm good. Some people are like, no, I want to know that is my dog, only my dog.
Yep.
But with humans, it's only one person. That's it. There is no exceptions. It's actually against the law to do it otherwise. And so you can rest assured that when that cremation takes place, everything that you're getting back is the remains of your loved one that you've entrusted to us.
Greg, what is the strangest request you've gotten for an item, an object, to be buried with an individual
without violating any privacy law?
Strangest. Yeah, so there's a lot of them that I can't talk about, but I wouldn't say anything is really strange. Obviously there's a lot of unique stuff. People want this, people want that, surfboards, kayak paddles.
What's common? What's real common?
Really just a lot of stuff. Like people want to bring stuff from home. Like, that was Dad's favorite blanket. Okay, great. Put it in there. Not a problem. Or, he really liked UGA. Can we put this football helmet under his arm? Sure. Not a problem if that's what you want to do. Or, he liked to hunt. So can we put a shotgun in there next to it? Yeah, whatever. I mean, just like I tell our staff, it is not illegal or immoral, and it's not going to hurt us, then we'll do it. We're not in the business of normally saying no unless it meets one of those three categories. Sure. But we just try to honor what they want to do. So yeah, there's been some pretty unique requests and pretty unique wardrobe requests and things like that. And so there's just a lot of times you just have to say, okay. Internally, you're like, all right, I'll do what you asked me to do. This is on y'all. I'll do whatever you asked me to do.
That's good.
Okay, Greg, if somebody wants to have, let's say, a wake, viewing, what have you, somewhere else besides a church or the funeral home, can they do that? Like if they had some odd requests, like, I want you to come bring their body overlooking this lake and everybody's going to come to this park and view the body. Is that a thing? Like, can you do that?
Yeah, if it's your personal property. On public property, probably not. You're not going to be met with a warm reception with that. I'll say that we've taken people home quite a few times, like take them to their house, put them in their living room, put them in their man room, whatever. In those situations, we won't even stay for visitation unless they want us to. Like, we'll leave them there. We'll come back the next day and check on the body, make sure everything's good, no issues. You don't see that a whole lot anymore, but 20 years ago, it was pretty common still, but every now and then we'll get a request for that. But, I mean, if somebody's got a lake house or something, or say they got a houseboat and they spend a lot of time on their boat and they want us to have the visitation on the boat, again, it falls into that category. If it's not illegal or immoral, we'll do it. I mean, you tell us what you want to do. I mean, we shoot people into outer space now. I mean, that's not a joke. We really do. I mean, we have packages of people there's 4 different levels of outer space they will send you to, cremated remains. If you name it, we can do it. We'll make you a part of the reef. There's a reef in Key Biscayne, Florida that we actually own. It's a natural underwater reef. If you're cremated, you can scuba dive down there and place your loved one yourself if you want to.
Interesting. Okay, so the last few questions we got, just kind of random. I had just thought of one concerning caskets. Is it possible for me to make my own casket before I die? And if that's legal, where do I go to figure out what the requirements are?
Yeah, you can absolutely make your own. And I had quite a few people that have done that. And we don't discourage it. Obviously, I had a guy that I knew for many years, and he would joke every time I saw him, my casket's in the basement. I made it. And I'm like, yeah, I know you did. And he really did. He was a woodworker, and he made a pine plank casket, just very simple. And it was great. I mean, that's what he wanted. That's what his family wanted. So there's nothing in the law that says you have to buy a casket from us, and we can't charge you extra if you don't buy it from us. So that's the great news, is there's no penalty for that. A lot of people just don't want a casket sitting around in their basement, but there's some that do. I mean, they take that very seriously, and they want to be involved in that part of the process. And I think it's great personally. I mean, me being an outdoors guy, but there's a lot of people that make them out of old barn wood now and everything else. The Amish community is big into making their own caskets. They actually make them to sell as a business, and so you can buy those. And so they'll sell directly to funeral homes. I don't know if they sell to the public, but excellent craftsmanship, obviously. But you could probably find some plans online or just measure it up yourself. A lot of times we've had people call us and say, hey, what's the dimensions of a normal size vault? So I want to make sure the outside of this casket would fit in a standard vault. And we can give them that information, and it's fine. I mean, we're happy to give it to them. Like I said, we don't discourage that stuff. This is a very personal experience. You'll never have a more personal relationship than you will with your funeral director. A lot of times you won't know about the relationship because you're not going to be here, but it's a very personal experience. So we don't discourage it at all.
So there's nothing really with the requirements as far as how thick that wood's got to be or anything like that, because it's really all just going inside the the steel or the concrete vault, right? So is there any stipulations on how thick the casket itself has to be?
No stipulations. As long as it'll hold you to get from point A to point B and it won't fall apart on your pallbearers and injure them. That's really the only requirement.
Tim just put an item on his to-do list, I think.
I know. I'm like, well,
saw the light bulb go off.
I think I'm gonna need to do that. I just got to find a place.
It's the ultimate do-it-yourself.
Yes. It's the
For
UK,
sure.
man.
Doing it yourself in the afterlife.
Maybe I can make it where it's like, y'all can just kind of piece it together. Like I'll do all the pieces and then you can just, fasten
like
it together.
some assembly required kind of thing.
Like an IKEA package, it's all flat.
Totally.
And then y'all can just put it together.
Your wish is my friends have to put together my casket for my funeral.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
I'm in. All right. Have you ever dealt with exhuming a body? Have you ever been involved with that?
Numerous times, yes.
Okay, and what usually is that usually crime related, or are there other instances?
No, very, 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 very few times is it related to any type of criminal aspect. Normally it's the family is moving and, nobody's going to be here to visit the gravesite, or,
Really?
We've even dealt with families that, that mom moved to Florida, dad's going to be here, and mom passes in Florida. The son's like, I want dad down here. And so we exhume dad, we cremate him, and then send the remains to Florida because mom's going to be cremating so everybody can be together.
Wow.
That is mind-boggling to me.
Take your body with you. I've never even thought about that.
But I'm mind-boggled.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the
happens a lot more than you think.
The criminal thing is like, that's for TV and CIS.
It does happen periodically, but normally the way forensics and stuff is now, most of the time, a burial's not going to take place if there's any type of question of anything. They're going to delay everything until they get what they need. You know, there have been cases that are well documented on TV that people would have definitely not, they would have gotten away with the crime had a couple of things not connected, and then they exhumed someone and realized that, oh, we didn't test for this, but here it is. It's very obvious now. So yeah, that's definitely happened. And there's quite a few of those that are local too.
Is there a time of the year, maybe in our area, I guess you could say, where it's a very common time to die? Like, are there certain months of the year where you've got way more funerals happening?
Always seems like it's around the holidays. You say that jokingly, but it's true. I don't think there's a time that necessarily, maybe the early spring, late fall, that seems to be the busiest. You talk to any old funeral directors, old morticians, they'll tell you when the sap rises and falls, that's the busiest time, which is early spring and late fall. And usually you can set your watch to that. Usually the summer month, a little bit of a lull sometimes. I mean, obviously nobody controls this but the good Lord, and so that's not a decision we get to make. Those two parameters are normally pretty go-to. You can early spring, late fall, guaranteed.
I've got another random question that wasn't on our list. So we're all Christians, and so I've always had the thought: has anybody requested that they are buried in a certain direction, like their head is faced to the east or something weird like that?
Oh yeah, it used to be it's not so much common now unless you are of the Muslim faith or something like that. Obviously, there's very strict requirements. And we actually have a small Muslim section in our cemetery, but they're very strict on some directional stuff. But a lot of like my grandmother, God rest her soul, she was as Southern Baptist as it come, and you had to be facing east or Jesus was not going to come get you. It was just not going to happen. So
Right.
that generation firmly believed you had to be facing east.
Yeah. Well, and there's all kinds of things. Like even I've done reading up on a lot of Christians do not want to get cremated, myself included. I don't have time to get into all of that, but there are reasons behind why certain people wouldn't want to be cremated too. So all kinds of different stuff. I mean, we'd have to do a whole nother show on all that. But guys, you got any other random questions to ask Greg before we wrap up?
I do, and this one's not super random. It's something that's important. Military burials. I know that a smaller percentage of our population serves today than compared to previous generations. But have you been involved in military burials, and how does that go? How does it kind of differentiate from a standard?
I've been involved in a lot of them. I'm a veteran myself, and so. Yeah, there's, the World War II generation, Korean War generation. That's what you're seeing a lot of those older guys now. Obviously our country over the past 20 years was involved in some wars. And obviously we're on the tail end of that when things don't go the way they should and someone sacrificed their life for our country. And so it's always, to me as a veteran, been an honor to be a part of any of those services. And so, we have a very large national cemetery here in the metro area, Georgia National up in Canton. It's a beautiful cemetery. It's massive. And that's where a lot of the veterans in this area choose to be laid to rest, if they don't already have other locations. But, those services are always unique. They're always moving. And as a veteran myself, like I said, I see it as an honor to be able to lay a brother or sister to rest that's had a great life.
That's great. I really appreciate your service as well. Random related to this, have you ever? So I know sometimes, and there's a bunch of nonprofits now that they'll go overseas, whether it's Vietnam or Korea, and they'll find American remains over there, someone that's been MIA and brought back. Have you ever been involved in any of that?
I haven't at my location, but I know that our company has quite a few. Yes, they've repatriated quite a few of those remains back home once they've been identified, through DNA and stuff like that. And so, really awesome project that they have. Here on the home front, we have a couple of projects that we do. We have the Dignity Memorial Homeless Veterans Burial Program. And so that is for homeless veterans that are unidentified or unclaimed. And we will actually find out who they are. We will get their VA records. We will provide them a uniform, full military service.
Wow.
We don't accept money for that. We don't accept donations. We don't accept anything. We just do it because it's the right thing to do. And we also work closely with another group out of Canton called the Missing in America Project. And it's basically same thing, veterans that have been cremated that are sitting in a funeral home safe or locked up somewhere on somebody's mantle that everybody's forgotten about. And so we do the same process. We find out who they are. We get those people the ability to be buried at Georgia National. We set up service and we give them a fitting burial.
Man, that's so great. And you said it was Missing in America, that last one?
Yeah, last one was called Missing in America Project.
Okay, so get out there and look that up if you have the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Greg, there's probably tons of other stuff we could ask you, and I think when we put out this episode, we're probably going to have people like, "Why didn't you ask him this or that?" But maybe later on down the road, we'll have you back on to ask you some more crazy questions. But this was very interesting. I loved hearing all of this. And Greg, thank you so much for your time. And you got such a special occupation, and it is not very often. I mean, I've never talked to a mortician before. I mean, at least not at length,
right?
Ever. So this was a very interesting conversation.
It's a very special service that he's providing. That sure. Nobody thinks about on a regular basis.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great.
Yeah. So Greg, thank you so much. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. And remember, we're on a every other week schedule now. So we'll see you guys back in 2 weeks from now. Thanks so much.